everybody. My name is Philip Shepard. I'm a local real estate agent located right here in Northwest Arkansas. And today this is part 3, so trace, of our Northwest Arkansas and Recession. I guess this is a trilogy now. So the trilogy continues. And so today we're talking about the actual housing side of the potential recession, the most realistically recession, obviously, and Northwest Arkansas. So let's talk about that. But before we begin, if you could like this video, and also subscribe, that would make the world of difference. I try to produce as much content as humanly possible about Northwest Arkansas because I want to make sure that my content goes in front of the right people at the right time looking to move here. So thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. All right, so housing, recession, economic, all the fun things. Let's jump right into it. And the first thing we're talking about is the most realistic, the elephant in the room, is that buying power is more limited now than it was about, let's say, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, maybe less than that. So obviously buying power is limited. So let's say, for instance, if you wanted to afford a $350,000 house, you might be cut down to $300,000 now. Crazy, I know. But one thing to little side note is the fact that even though interest rates are currently sitting around the 5 to 6% mark, the fact is obviously those are still historically low in comparison to what housing interest rates have been in the past. So it's kind of, when you compare 2% to 6%, you're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But still realistically, it's still very low. But it's one of those things where it's still, the buying power has been decreased significantly, which kind of stinks, but it is what it is. So I don't need to tell you that. Obviously, if you were looking to buy a home in the next couple months or so, your buying power is limited. That's not to say is the fact that I would necessarily wait to buy a home. I would definitely, if you are looking to buy a home in the next couple months, if you are moving to Northwest Arkansas and you are leaving, let's say, a different state, different city, moving here, I would still highly recommend doing that. I also recommend, if you do come down here, to do, and this is kind of like a little side note to actually how to, the whole process of buying a home here, is to get like a 2 to 3 month Airbnb, VRBO kind of thing, and then just kind of search around for the best location, the best place, and see where you want to end up housing wise, and then you might have like a 30-day closing. So usually it's good to get that kind of like wiggle room when you do come down here. So if you do come down here, definitely check that out. I have videos on that I will link below as well. And then secondly, and this is where we're going to start getting into more of the specific things about Northwest Arkansas, is the fact that the speed at which people are moving here is not slowing down. So what I have noticed is the fact that people are still moving here at an insane rate. So which means that people are coming into the area as fast as they were, a year ago. In fact, it's probably actually sped up quite a little bit as well. Now, the fact that the little difference is that people might be waiting, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but people might be waiting about, 3 months to 4 months before they actually pick an area that they want to be in. Like, they're taking their time a little bit more than they have in the past. And so it's one thing to consider is that if you are moving here, or if you're thinking about selling your home potentially, or if you are moving here, know the fact that the growth rate of Northwest Arkansas has not decreased at all. In fact, it's probably sped up a little bit. And the fact is that when you do get here, you might want to wait a little bit longer just because you have a little more time. And we'll talk about why in a second, but people are waiting, 3 months to 4 months before they really start making that commitment of where they want to be in the area. Now, I do admit the fact that usually about 2 months is kind of the point where people really do hunker down and say, okay, I want this spot, or this spot. And then they purchase a home and then they give themselves 30 days, sometimes 45 days to close. And then there's some sort of delayed occupancy, et cetera, little fun things like that. But besides that point, usually they're actually in a house within 3 to 4 months. So that hasn't really changed too drastically. It was a little faster, maybe about 3 to 4, 6 months ago-ish. But the fact is that people are still moving here at a fast rate. They might just be staying around here a little longer in an Airbnb to find that perfect kind of settling area, school system, the whole shebang that they're looking for. That reminds me. I have a 3-day itinerary linked below. So maybe you're coming down to Northwest Arkansas and you're thinking like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, because there's so much to do. There's a 3-day itinerary linked below just for you. Maybe you're into sports, maybe you're an adventurer, maybe you're into art and culture, maybe you're a foodie, like me, obviously. So there's a 3-day itinerary linked below for you. So go ahead and download that so when you come down here, you know exactly what to do in those 3 days when you come down here. And also when you do come down here, definitely give me a call because we can check out some homes for sale or for rent and see how far your dollar will go in Northwest Arkansas compared to where you're coming from. And this is where it gets very specific in Northwest Arkansas when it comes to recession and all different things, is the fact that the interesting homes have hung around on the market a little longer than normal. And normal is a very vague term. Normal, the last 3 years of the market, is a little different now than it was before. So if you have an interesting home, let's say for instance, if it's not, I don't want to define what interesting is. Let's say if it's just not a very, and interesting could be changing from person to person. But if you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in a quiet cul-de-sac in any of the neighborhoods that has a great school district, it's not going to be a problem at all. You're going to sell just fine. The interesting homes that, let's say, for instance, have a basement or have all the bedrooms upstairs and nothing downstairs, those interesting homes that are just kind of fit a very niche group, what has been happening is the people that are moving here that have a more limited budget than before, that have been hanging around a little longer, they're not as quick to move on those homes because they'd rather wait like, sometimes an extra 30 days to find that perfect home that has that 3-bedroom, 2-bath, split floor plan, 4-bedroom, whatever the case is. They're willing to wait a little extra longer to find that actual home versus just jumping on those interesting homes. So just be aware that if you are coming down here, there are interesting homes, which creates an opportunity for buyers, obviously. So if you want to find those interesting homes, the sellers are sometimes in a more interesting position to sell because it's been on the market for 14 days, which seems like a long time. But if it's been on the market for 14 days, as a buyer coming down here, you might have an opportunity to get a quote unquote better deal than you would have 6 months ago, just because those interesting homes are sitting on the market for a little longer than usual. And this goes into and I've already kind of talked about this, but this goes into my next point, which is a message to buyers. So if you are coming down here, again, you can find a more interesting home, a deal, than you might have 6 months ago, because there will be less competition. Now, in these interesting homes is the fact that that's not necessarily saying there won't be offers on it. It just might mean that might be in a more interesting position to sell if it has been on the market for 14 days. So that doesn't mean that you might not go against competition when it comes to offers. It just might mean that you might go against less competition. Or the fact is that sometimes individuals with interesting homes, and like I said, I'm doing bunny quotes because the fact that interesting is a very vague definition, is the fact that, just because it's not been on the market for 14 days doesn't mean that the sellers are willing to sell it at that price. It just means the fact that they are realizing the fact that, it hasn't sold in the first 3 to 5 days, that there might be some changes they need to make to the home. And so they might be willing to sit for a little longer. And so you have to play that game from a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective to, figure out how you want to handle that. Now let's talk on the seller side for a minute. Now, one thing that has been creeping up more and more is the fact that you might not be able to push your price as far as you thought you would have in the past. And that's just because the buying power isn't there anymore. Now, on the other side, there is as many people moving here. So there's this kind of weird dynamic happening because the fact that you might not be able to push the square foot per house or whatever the case is past that point, or you can't push it as far as you did in the past, like the last 2 years, for instance, or 1 year specifically. But one thing is that the fact is that you have a very unique home, not interesting, but unique home. Let's say, for instance, 3-bedroom, 2-bath and Rogers with like a really nice outbuilding, a pool, whatever the case is, those interesting, or I shouldn't say interesting, but those very fun kind of additives to the home, you'll be able to push that square footage a little higher than you would have, like obviously a 3-bedroom, 2-bath and Rogers that has none of those things. So I say all that to say is that you might not be able to push it as far as unless you have some really interesting things done to the home. But on top of that, there is as many people moving here. So I think the interesting thing to say is that instead of having 10 offers on the table, you might only have like 5 offers on the table at the moment, or maybe 7 to say the least. So I say all that to say is that if you do have very fascinating, fun features about your home, that you can push your square footage a little higher than you typically would. But if you just have like, let's say a regular 3-bedroom, 2-bath and Rogers, I'm just saying an example, you might have a trouble pushing that next level when it comes to square footage. So just keep that in mind. And it really is because of the tightening of the budgets of people moving in here, that they might not have the budget before. And so it's kind of this kind of give and take kind of thing at the moment. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. I appreciate you guys watching. Again, if you are thinking about moving down to Northwest Arkansas, download my 3-day itinerary link below. Maybe you're an adventurer, maybe you're a sports person, maybe you're into art and culture, maybe you're a foodie. There's a 3-day itinerary link below for you, so go ahead and download that. Also, when you do come down here, definitely give me a call and we can check out some homes for sale or for rent and see how far your dollar will go in Northwest Arkansas compared to where you're coming from. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.